T-64 is a Russian main battle tank that you unlocked at tier 4. And the reason why it's so significant is that its front armor is really hard. It's excellent in PvP. The main gun is a little bit inaccurate and has a long aim time, but if you just stand front to front, it's really hard to that enemy can pen you. You bounce a lot of shots. That's why it's also an excellent tank to work on a damage mitigation challenge. Basically meaning that enemy tanks shoot at you and they cannot penetrate your armor, either by bounce or simply not penetrating. And when you have mitigated or deflected enough damage, you unlock the Chieftain Mk.5 tank, which opens up the whole Eastern main battle tank line, which I talked about previously, saying that it's one of the best tank lines to go through, and you will see a little bit more about that later, why it's so good. So looking at the team setup here, upper left corner, we see me, Phoenix Leclerc in the T-64. Kvastika is artillery. We also have a tank destroyer, the Mk.5, the normal fighting vehicle, Mk.5, which is basically Mk.10, but instead of having an anti-tank gun, it has an autocannon on it, and an Mk.100T scouting vehicle with excellent view range, and of course an autocannon. Fighting in play versus environment load tier can be really fun and really satisfying. The developers actually changed this a few updates ago, where before it was hard-coded so that you couldn't one-shot tanks. But they gave it a little bit of thought, listened to the community feedback, and they actually removed that part in play versus environment when you're fighting AI. So now you can actually one-shot the enemy tanks, AIs, like you just saw before. And as you can see, this Big Light Panzer 57 here, also known as the Beagle 57, is trying to shoot me, but I'm successfully deflecting his shots due to the really hard front armor. Now, if you are really working on the deflect challenge, where you need to do this a lot, then having this tank, basically letting an autocannon like the Big Light Panzer 57 just stand there and shoot at you the entire round. Obviously, you won't score a lot for it, but it's one of the most efficient way of unlocking Chieftain Mk.5. Since I already have that unlocked, I won't bore you with just standing and letting me shoot me for the entire round. Now I'm engaging the superior T-64 here, and I'm firing heat rounds, high explosive anti-tank rounds, and fortunately trying to be able to have enough pen value on the ground to penetrate through his frontal armor. And, when I talk about pen, I'm talking about the shell's ability to penetrate thickness of armor. Angle, the way the armor is angled also comes into effect. But regardless of the pen value, you have various indicators on your center of your aiming reticle. If you have noticed it, it turns from red to orange to green and vice versa. This indicates if you can penetrate or not. If it's green, you stand the biggest chance of penetrating, and if it's red, you have the lowest chance of penetrating. However, even if it's red and you have nothing else to shoot at, you can try and actually shoot it, because it's just saying that you have a very low chance of penetrating. And I have actually managed to get penetrating rounds off of red indicators. You're just very, very, very unlikely to get it. Now the T-64 has a really slow chassis traverse, which means it basically is how it can rotate the chassis towards the target. And it also is a little bit slow in its turret traverse, to basically move the turret left and right. So in order to faster bring my cannon to bear on the target, I'm actually moving the chassis as well, because when I move the chassis, it moves the turret as well. Let me see if I can demonstrate it here now. So if I was just moving the turret to the left here, and now I'm moving the chassis as well, you can see that the turret is actually moving faster. Various tanks obviously behave differently on this, and it's something you will figure out over time. Let's go and help this Pack 90 out. The Big Light Panzer 57 is a really nifty armored fighting vehicle. When you're fighting in play versus environment and you're not in a main battle tank, it can be really devastating for it, because it sneaks up on you a little bit, and it's actually sort of silent when it's shooting at you. Normally you hear the impact of its autocannon shells when it's impacting your session, which is a large snap, a snappy distinction to it. Especially for low tiers, it's one of those, if I'm not in the main battle tank, I like to prioritize and just take out the Big Light Panzers first, because they can really do a lot of damage if you're not aware. Another thing to point out is that, which is really a big difference compared to all the tanks, is that angling your armor and side scraping, which is basically having cover in front of you like I do now, and then just kind of angling the armor to get the bounce of the shell due to the acute angle of the armor, doesn't really work very well here in Armored Warfare. I've seen it successfully done, but not. I think I've just seen it done probably 4 times in over 2,400 battles. What ends up happening is that you're exposing your rear engine part of your tanks too much on the side, and then you just get the shells there penetrating, and then you can't move, and then you're stuck. So simply don't do it. Alright, that was the T-64. Now, after having done the damage mitigation, you end up getting a tank called Chieftain Mk.5. Let me open it up here right now. Basically this tank, it's okay to grind through, and then you get to where you really want to get. This is Challanger 1 and Challanger 2. Now I'm going to jump into Challanger 1 just to show you guys how awesome this frontal armor of this main battle tank is. It has one weak spot, and I will cover that in a little bit, but that's really well worth it to go through this trouble of damage mitigation. And if you haven't unlocked this tank, you can just move your mouse over it and you will see the values appear up here. And since I've done that, I cannot show that to you right now. It will show you two values, one value being lower and one value being higher in terms of the damage mitigations that you need to do. Now the lower value is if you do it in player versus player, and the higher one is if you do it in player versus environment, which is up here. I highly recommend that you do this in player versus environment because it's a lot easier to get damage mitigation in from enemy AI than it is with real people who will actually try and flank you and kill you. AI does this on occasion, but overall it's a lot easier to do this with the AI for obvious reasons than a real human player that can adapt to what you do. So let's jump into the Challenger 1